When it comes to the internet, if you don't talk about a trending topic whilst it's trending, right, then it's pretty much old news, right? Knowing that, I'm not really expecting this video to get a lot of views. Although to be honest, I mean, my videos don't really get a lot of views anyways. So if this gets more than 20 views, then I think that's a cause for a celebration. But regardless of that, I wanted to make this video anyways for two reasons. Firstly, this is pretty much the type of content that I'm making on this channel. But secondly, I had some issues with the way people approach the problem. As in, like, I felt like the discussion around this problem was a little bit lackluster, generally speaking. And so I thought I'd share my own perspective on it. But what makes this video a little bit different from I think other ones on the topic is that I'm going to be approaching this problem in a slightly different way, in a way which I think helps to really cut through a lot of the noise in the question. And I'm going to be doing that by talking about this question in terms of stats. Okay, so to start, let's just start up by actually talking about only one gorilla versus one man. So let's just compare the stats of these two characters. So let's just remove the 100 man from the question altogether. So let's say we have some human, right, with his own stats, and let's say we have the gorilla with his own. And let's also say that this is the only information that you know about this topic. So pretty much pretend that you go to memory warped, you have no idea what the hell a human is or a gorilla is. This is all the information that you actually know about this two characters, right? Now I should also talk about the stats that I'm talking about as well. But to be honest, these are not too relevant, so I'm gonna go through them very quickly. We have the attack stat, and in here you would have every metric that can be used for tagging. So you could have things like your bite force, how much you can deadlift, how fast you can punch, how much your punch hurts, and all that stuff. Then you would have your defense, which is just your defense. Then you would have your agility, which is pretty much how agile you are. So on one end you would have someone like Spider-Man, who is, you know, extremely agile, and on the other end you would have someone like, I guess, a sloth or a snail, right? Not very agile at all. And then you would have your stamina, which is just your stamina, and then finally you would have your HP. Now, knowing that you have all this information, right, and knowing that this is all the information that you actually know on this topic, the first question we have to ask is, if I were to ask you who would actually win between these two characters, who would you think would win, right? Who would you think would win between the gorilla and the human, based only on the stats? So I guess if you wanted to play along, you can think about this yourself, and I guess think about what the answer is, right? Now, the answer, to no one's surprise, would obviously be the gorilla. And if I were to ask you why you chose the gorilla, it would most likely be because the gorilla has higher stats than the human, right? Like, that's pretty much the reason. And I guess if you were to bring back knowledge that we actually do know on this topic, like just pretend that you got your memories back, right? You would say the gorilla because the gorilla is very strong. He can paralyze someone with one punch. He can rip them apart from their torso or something, or they can punch so hard that they will crush your rib cage or something. However strong you think the gorilla is, that is pretty much the reasoning. Now this is all good, right? This is all good. And from here, we have established two things. Firstly, the human would lose. The human will lose, and they will lose pretty easily. And secondly, the reason they will lose is because they are outclassed in all of the stats that actually matter, right? Okay, so now that we've done this, we have pretty much proved that the gorilla can beat one human. And knowing this, we can bring back the original question, but ask it in a slightly different way. So knowing that the gorilla can beat one human, and we have proved that it can beat one human, right? How many humans can the gorilla beat in total? And I guess to bring back the question as well, is that number bigger than 100? And you will notice that I'm kind of reframing the question here because I'm kind of phrasing it in a slightly different way. Now you might think this is a bit trivial because, you know, rephrasing the question kind of doesn't really do anything, right? Like this is kind of meaningless. But you'll see in a second that this is actually a little bit important. Okay, so that's pretty much the question we have to answer now. How many humans can the gorilla beat, and is that number more than 100? So again, you can think about this yourself because obviously you are playing along, and I guess you can try to, you know, think about what the answer is. And as for the answer, I don't actually know, right? I don't actually know what the answer is. To be honest, the information that we have so far, because again, I'm saying that this is all the information that you know, so pretend you have no idea what the hell a gorilla is or a human is. Based on this information, you actually can't answer this question. You can't actually answer this question with a lot of certainty, and I don't really think anyone can actually answer this question at all, because I don't really know how many humans an average gorilla could like deal with before it dies, right? I don't know how you would even figure that out based only on this information. So we're kind of stuck, to be honest. We're kind of stuck here. So to help us, right, to help us, let's add another element here. Let's make an assumption, and let's just assume that the gorilla can beat some X number of humans, and let's actually set this X to be like an actual number. So imagine that you have the stats of the gorilla, right? And let's just assume that the gorilla can beat X equals 50 humans. So the gorilla can 100% deal with 50 humans, and that's how many he can deal with before dying. Okay, so let's just say that this is the case. Okay, so now that we've done this, let's actually think about what we have so far. So we have this number which is 50, and that is the amount of humans that the gorilla can beat. But obviously, the gorilla is losing this battle because 50 is no more than 100, right? And because of that, we kind of have lost this battle. The gorilla has lost this battle, not us, because we want to win, right? But let's actually try to make the gorilla win this battle. And let's actually try to get this number to 100. So we basically need a way to raise this kill count amount to 100. So let's think about how we could do that based only on the information that we have access to so far, right? So let's actually think about what, I guess, information that is, right, we have access to. So we have the two creatures, which again, you have no idea what the hell a human is or a gorilla is, and we have the stats of them, and we have the kill count. But you will notice that the stats are what dictate what the kill count number is, right? Like, is the gorilla stats doing some transformation plus the human stat, and it's being combined somehow to spit out the kill count, right? Which means that if you were to increase or decrease the stats of the humans or the gorilla, the kill count should increase, right? That's pretty much what should happen, right? So knowing this, what we can do is that we can basically raise the stats of either the gorilla or the human to basically increase the kill count. So the next question is, which of these stats should we actually play around with? Should we change the stats of the gorilla or the ones of the human? So I guess we can either raise the stats of the gorilla or lower the stats of the human. So now from here, you're kind of only really left with one choice, and that is that you have to try to raise the stats of the gorilla. And the reason for that is that decreasing the stats of the humans actually doesn't really help us much at all. And that might sound a little bit confusing, but you'll see why I say that in a second. So now that we figured that out, the next question is, which of his stats should we actually increase? So which of his 5 stats should we actually increase to change the kill count value? Now this is also where we need to be a little bit intentional, because we can't really just change all of the stats, right? Like, we can't just 10x the attack stat, make him like a defensive god, or make him like Spider-Man or something, because we have to make sure that he's still a gorilla at the end of the day, right? Like we really can't change the stats up too much. So I guess a better question to ask is, which of his 5 stats should we actually increase, or which of his 5 stats are the most sensitive to actually changing the kill count? Okay, so this is pretty much the third question that you can, I guess, answer. You can try to answer. So I guess you can mentally pick one out, pick one of the 5 stats out, and try to figure out which one do you think is actually the most important. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's just go through each of them to figure out which one actually is the correct stat that we should actually raise. Okay, so let's cover the HP and defense stat first, and we can, I guess, raise each one by one arbitrary point. And after we do that, as you can see, it doesn't actually raise the X value up by much, right? It doesn't actually help us that much. So if you chose either of these two, then I'm sorry but you have lost. You lost this, I guess, question. Now the reason I say that this doesn't actually help us is that these two actually don't really matter that much, because these two are defensive stats, right? If these stats are the ones that are actually being used in the battle, it means that gorilla is getting beaten up, right? It's getting beaten up, and I guess this would help it survive the beating that it's getting from the humans, right? But this is not very useful if the increase that you're actually having is like one arbitrary point, which is not really that much at all, like, right? Like, that's actually a pretty small change. So that's why this is actually not really that useful. And I think a better stat would be one which actually focuses on the gorilla actually attacking the humans instead, right? Okay, so now that we've done that, let's actually move on, and let's actually talk about the agility stat next. So again, we can raise this one by 1 point and see what we get. And as you can see, it also doesn't help that much, right? It also doesn't really help them that much. And this actually makes sense, because if the agility is raised, it pretty much means that the character, the gorilla, is pretty much using the stamina stat up, right, in order to, I guess, be really agile. And the reason for this is that raising the agility stat pretty much uses up your stamina, right? Like if you're using up your agility, it pretty much means that you're using up your stamina as well, right? And since the gorilla has bad stamina anyways, agility is not really something that the gorilla is, gonna be freaking maximizing at all, right? So that's why this doesn't really help us either. So if you chose this as the stat as well, then I'm sorry, but you're also wrong. Okay, so let's talk about the last two, which is the attack stat and the stamina. I'll start with the attack stat first. And again, we can raise this up by one arbitrary point. And as you can see, it definitely helps. This one also definitely helps. And you might think, okay, I guess we found the one that we were looking for. We can give ourselves a clap on the shoulder. I guess no, not a clap on the shoulder, a clap on the back, and say good job. But before we come to any conclusions, let's look at the stamina stat next. So again, we do the same thing. We raise it up by one arbitrary point, and as you can see, it raises the kill count value up by most. Now, and this actually goes into, I guess, the point that I was trying to make in this video, that the attack stat is not actually the most important stat in actually figuring out who would actually win this battle. That is actually the stamina stat instead. And on top of that, and this might be a little bit controversial, but the attack stat largely does not matter at all. Now when I say that it largely doesn't really matter, what I mean is that we only really need the attack stat to be higher than a certain threshold, and the threshold is if the gorilla can actually beat one human, right? And that's why we also did that one question at the beginning where we had to figure out whether a gorilla can actually beat one human. And the reason I say that is because any more attacking power that the gorilla has on top of this, right, is not important, right? Like if the gorilla can absolutely decimate one human with, I guess, one punch, increasing his attack power more on top of that is not really gonna change the outcome. Like the guy's already dead, right? Like how you can't really kill someone more than just killing them, right? And in this particular case, right, since you have increased the attack power by a very small amount anyways, you've kind of gone from, okay, maybe the guy doesn't die from one punch to now he kind of dies from one punch. But in other, I guess, scenario, the guy is pretty much immobile anyways, right? Like he needs to go to the hospital. Or I guess in one scenario, the guy needs to go to a funeral instead. But like it's GG's for that one person anyways, right? That's what this attack stat in this case doesn't really matter, and it's actually not the one that's most correlated with actually increasing the kill count. Now, you might say that, okay, but the gorilla is actually far more stronger than what I'm saying, right? Like, okay, maybe you could say that the gorilla could do something like this where he has like 10 people on top of him, and he pulls that move from where he pulls like a Hollywood move, and everyone who's on top of him just goes flying, right? And I guess if you wanted to give him more credit, and if he does that, then he could kill every single person that was actually trying to tackle him. And even if you say that, that still doesn't actually make a difference in this fight. And the reason being is that the attack stat is largely dictated by the stamina stat. As in, like, regardless of how strong you think the gorilla is, when the gorilla attacks, you will be using up his stamina stat, right? So even if you scale the attack stat to be as high as you want, in the end, the gorilla is still using up his stamina to attack, right? And so because of that, stamina is actually the stat that's actually the most important in actually figuring out whether the gorilla would actually win the battle or not. Okay, so now that we figured that out, we can pretty much exit out of this exercise we were doing, right? Because we have pretty much figured out which stat is actually the most important in actually increasing the kill count value. So now that we know this, in order to actually answer this question with a little bit more certainty, we can just search this up on Google and just search up how much stamina does a gorilla have, and does he actually have enough stamina to actually beat 100 humans. And as you can see, he doesn't actually have that much stamina, and he definitely doesn't really have enough to actually beat 100 humans. Gorillas get tired pretty easily and pretty fast, right? So because of that, the gorilla would actually lose the battle. And yeah, that's pretty much my argument. And the main thing that I wanted to get across in this video is that the attack stat largely doesn't matter, and I think it matters less than what people are actually saying. And it's actually the gorilla stamina which actually helps the gorilla in actually winning this battle.